What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Guitar Hour. This is 175, maybe, probably. Correct. I am just getting my voice back. Bear with me. It's been a horse couple of days. We've gone from
horse.
We've gone from time horse. The time horse is haunting me.
Everything you got.
Yeah, exactly. My voice will probably start cracking if I get more animated through the episode. So look forward to that. As usual, I am joined by Mr. David Beebe.
Hey, everyone.
And Mr. Tom Quayle.
Hello.
So we're in a weird position where it's like there's not been that much time since we recorded the last one, like the old days.
Well, I could tell because in Studio One, the last time we did a podcast, I had to hunt on my actual Windows Explorer for the project, whereas this time it was the third thing down. So it can't have been that long.
I had forgotten all of my Logic shortcuts when I was editing the audio. I used to just power my way through with all these, keyboard ninja shortcuts, and I just forgot them all. So that's how long it's been.
So I don't know. Have we got any stories? Is anything? Nothing's really, other than me getting some sort of lurgy. I've not really got any. I didn't get ripped off by a cash machine this week.
Yeah.
Like,
You've both been sick, haven't you? With
oh God, yeah.
Everyone.
It's got to be like 5.5 weeks of coughing now.
Did you introduce Tom?
No.
Oh,
No, but that's all right because I kind of jumped in with the time horse comment. So I introduced myself with time horse.
I'm Mr. Tom Quayle.
As is traditional. Time horse.
Oh, that was quite funny. Somebody thought it was time whores.
Yeah.
Did they though? Did they?
Horse.
Did they? I'm not sure they did.
Yeah.
That's definitely
it was still funny.
If Blockbuster was still a thing, that would be definitely a movie.
Blockbuster is a thing. It's a thing again.
What?
It's to be coming back, isn't it?
Go have a look on Google right now, Dan, and type in Blockbuster reopening.
The listeners can do that, or the watchers can do that right now.
I'm telling you now. I used to work at Blockbusters. I said that with a bit too much pride, didn't I?
You'd be like the comic book guy from The Simpsons, just judging everyone if they're not renting Alien.
There was something really, really, really weird about when people would bring DVDs back and they'd be all scuffed, and then you put them in this machine. Did you ever see one of these machines?
No.
So obviously they couldn't just buy new DVDs. So you put it in this machine and then you'd pour this weird like Android looking milk in, from like Alien into the top of this machine, and it would spin round in this milk, whatever this stuff was, and it come out pristine. God knows what was in this horrible liquid.
Digital milk.
That was for some reason that was an overriding memory from working at Blockbusters. So and waiting for GTA 5 to come out. 4. That's how old I am.
So I had a thought about the video format of this, and there was a couple of instances where I was thinking last week in the edit, like, into visual things, and people just listening are not going to get it. So I'm going to be a little bit conscious of that and try to do some audio descriptions of what's the thing they're doing.
It's like caption. What is it?
You can't have closed captions on a podcast.
I can't remember.
That's not going to help either. Oh yeah, let's close caption it. That'll work.
Anyway, Jake. So it's just three of us.
Jake's doing a show.
How are you going to do the video edit, Dan? With only three.
I'll just make a new overlay. As I'm a Photoshop beast. Well, I'm not a Photoshop beast, but I had to dust it off. But yeah, I've got an overlay for 4, for 1, and for 2. So I'll just I'll get one for 3, and then I'm covered.
So, in case you don't know what we're talking about, Dan put together a pretty cool video version of the pod last week, or whenever it was, 2 weeks ago. And so if you check out the Guitar Hour Podcast YouTube channel, then you could watch our faces, which we haven't particularly got great TV
faces.
We have faces for podcasts, don't we? So maybe listening's the best thing. But if you do want to watch it, you can check it out over on YouTube, and you'll catch all the visual references we're on about.
Yeah. I think I could just from a editing perspective, you can kind of get away with a bit more when it's visual. So if there's if you're just listening and there's a bit of crosstalk and a bit of da-da-da-da, then you feel like you need to clean that up for it to make sense. But when you're looking at guys and there's like 3 people like laughing or, whatever, you can be a bit more.
Well, it's a bit like on a phone call, isn't it? Where dead space on a phone call is the weirdest, most awful. It's like the most socially terrifying thing for human beings to have silence on a phone call. But on a video call, it's fine because you can see the other person.
In my podcast app, Overcast, it has this like silence skipping feature, which means I get used to listening to all my podcasts with all the awkward silences stripped out. And if I turn that feature off and listen to any podcast without that feature on, it sounds so weird. I've gotten so used to
like speed running it.
I was going to say, I can imagine a scenario where you'd like do that, and you'd have the thing where you set it to like half the, like twice as fast, sorry, and then every conversation that you have in real life, you'd be like the Micro Machines advert guy. Amazing.
So I've not really been doing much since the last one.
I've been doing tons and tons and tons of practice, which is good.
Cool, very good.
Which has been paying off, thankfully.
Yeah,
I feel like there's obviously this goes without saying, but there is a direct correlation. You know how much practice you've been doing by how thick your calluses are, and I've just realised how crappy my calluses have been for the past year. It's like they've been pathetic soy boy calluses, not proper. Ugh.
It's definitely a thing, man. Like if I go back to teaching or whatever after a bit of time off and I've not played very much, I feel it.
You lose your Chad calluses.
Oh, just my hands start to ache, then my fingers start to, when you're first learning and you're trying to learn how to bend and stuff, and then your fingers are like just screwed.
Mine are like a burnt chicken nugget now. It's terrible. Rock hard.
I was doing a little bit of messing around with something I'd heard about this a few times, and the last time I looked at it, it was, who is the guy that does like the proper, super thorough, intense YouTube videos on stuff?
Well, that's quite a wide.
No, but like extra, like super, like.
You don't mean the Vsauce guy?
No, it's a guitar.
Too wide, Dan. You need to bring
Robbie. What's his Robbie?
Is it guitar based?
Yeah,
Barnaby.
Yes.
Oh, that guy. Oh my God, he's a complete freak.
Yeah. See, there you go.
In the best possible way.
I don't know his last name's Alex Farron, maybe on Instagram. He's like sort of rootsy, bluesy, swing sort of guy. Put something up about the Barry Harris
minor six
diminished scale thing, playing around with that a little bit, and it's
cool.
Well,
there's a diminished chord in between every single inversion. So you go minor 6 chord inversion, minor 6 chord diminished, inversion, diminished, inversion, diminished, inversion, diminished.
And it's cool, and it's kind of working a few muscles. I'm not entirely sure what to do with it yet.
It's very good for chord melody harmonizations of stuff. So obviously on piano it's awesome because you've got both hands to kind of play voicings with a melody note on top, but it's really, really good for harmonizing melodies.
It's really, quite good really for moves.
For moves, yeah. Well, that's it. Yeah,
like climbing and climbing or descending or whatever.
Yeah.
So we mess around with that. But
cool.
Other than that,
those Robbie Barnaby, is it Barnaby?
Something like that, yeah.
Videos are absolutely insane. Although you get one, it's like once every 8 months or so, he does this rocket fuel, thesis. Basically, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. There's a few guys like that. There's a guy that does. It's absolutely not related, but you might have into this, Tom, especially after last week. There's a guy that does like the history of certain speedruns, and he's got like
the history of speedruns.
So it'll be like the history of Super Mario 3.
Right there,
like an hour video.
Like the history of speedruns doesn't sound like something that should be feasible because it's only been around for a couple of years. Although maybe not, though. Maybe
You're talking
not.
like, the history of like Super Mario speedrunning.
Oh, fair enough, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. And he'll do one video, but it might be like every couple of months, but it's like a proper, like detailed timeline of like when people started it and then, technology changed, so this happened and then this happened and this got discovered.
Of course, I didn't think about that. I think of it as a modern thing, but it's like 90s, wasn't it? Or even earlier.
But that stuff... that kind of model is really odd because you would think the algorithm would be like, nah, mate, you haven't posted for a month. No one's going to see this. So it's strange how those guys can sort of do it.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. It depends if they've got thousands and thousands of subscribers, though, but I guess because then they'll just see it. But it is, we were just talking before the show came on, the horror and power of YouTube to just, make things disappear before your very eyes. So I had a period where I was watching a ton of stuff to do with photography gear and filming gear because this new camera's come out that I won't go into, that I knew it was out, but I hadn't seen a single review of it come up on YouTube. And that's because I've been obsessed with this sounds really morbid, this air crash investigation channel. So basically then it's propagated all this stuff on disasters on my YouTube channel. So I've been watching it on my feed. And not a single video review of this camera has come up on my feed, which is mildly terrifying. It's really bizarre how it's that tailored now that the thing that you're into at that particular time, it floods your feed with it. It's really, really, oh man, terrifying.
More death, less tech.
More death, less tech. Yeah. Well, it's cheaper for me. I'm taking the cheap option.
I guess so.
Yeah.
But it just goes to show you how quickly you can disappear off somebody's feed as a guitar player if you're A, not posting very much, and B, if they're interested in something else temporarily. You're just gone. Completely gone. And you sit there posting with the best will in the world thinking, oh, this will go to all my subscribers. No, it won't. No, it won't.
I saw a guy, just while we're on this, this guy called Chris Ramsey, who's like, what used to be like a magician, but he does like sort of puzzles and stuff now. And like,
is he a bald-headed guy? Or not bald, but like
beardy.
Okay.
It's Canadian. And he's got, I think his channel's got 7.1 million subscribers.
Oof,
so
wow.
It's absolutely up there. And he posted a video about just being super burnt out. Like,
oh, right.
He was just saying, you know, he just got to come up with the goods every single week. And he's been doing that for the last 8 years. And he said, even if he spends a lot of time on a video, we'll put it out. And for whatever reason, he's got 7.1 million subscribers. And I think a video he put out had like 40,000 views. And he said, there's no way that's 600 odd thousand people that have just gone, oh, no, I don't feel it. I don't feel like watching it.
Maybe,
it can't be, right?
Maybe the route out of that is just to take like, maybe he needs to go like the Penguin Zero or whatever his name is, Penguinzo, kind of shit posting route. And that's his new job. That's all he does. He just does magic shit posting and that's it. That's his new thing. It seems to work. He
was saying he's got to the point where he's got employees and stuff now. So
yeah,
he's big enough that he's got a team of like editors and people that help with videos and camera. So he's got like 7 people that he has to pay, including himself, and to pay for this, you know, studio and stuff that he's got.
It's crazy when you watch. Have you ever watched Linus Tech Tips studio tour?
Yeah. It's like a whole
number of people that he employs. It's a proper media group, that is. And I think, what's he at? Like 10 million, maybe 15 million, something like that. So he's not that much higher. I mean, it is a lot higher because when you're in the millions, it's a lot higher. But still, what did you say? 7.5 million?
7.1, I think. 7.1.
Is there a guitar player with that many?
No, I think is it Beato or Paul Davids maybe as the top end out of the guitar.
There must be one some higher than that. What's Jared Dines on? He's not that high. He's not into that kind of figures, is he?
So what are we all drinking, by the way? Tom's on.
Oh, I'm on the expensive stuff, Optimal.
I've got Talisker Sky.
I'm on the Nick Offerman.
It's the wrong way around, isn't it?
Lagavulin.
That looks nice. Very nice, very nice. What are you on, Dan? The Talisker? Which one?
Sky.
Hey, if we keep doing videos like this, there's some sponsorship potential.
Have you ever got into Whiskey Tube?
No.
It's just a lot of old bearded men.
Yeah, I'm subscribed to a couple of channels, but I don't watch them. I find they're a bit too... Now, must not take this the way it's intended, but they're a bit too full-on American. And all I mean by that is they focus too much on American whiskey.
I watched the single malt ones.
Oh yeah, I don't know any. You'll have to send me some links. But I love American whiskey, but I want a whiskey channel that's dedicated to Isla, basically. So I need that.
The Duchess needs to start one.
Let's not go down that road.
Quite. Well, good friend of ours, Martin Miller's new album came out today.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Maze of My Mind, is it? Is that the top?
That's right.
So in digging into that, I haven't got through the full thing yet, but obviously the single has done really well. The first single over the last few weeks. It was absolutely awesome track. And yeah, he's presumably going to be playing some of that stuff live with the session band as well.
I think the band might be a tiny bit. It might not be actually. It might be,
isn't it? Yeah, of course. I know if
different drummer maybe.
Stuff, yeah.
And bass player, but I think the plan is to tour. They're touring the session band, and then there's going to be separate tours for the original material. But I'm struggling to. I was thinking about this earlier. I'm struggling to think of anybody else who's like soloed a project like this, you know, and done all the demos and the pre-production stuff to hit to the level that Martin's done it. And it's been so involved, not as a band, but as a solo artist to that level in the guitar world.
It's a little bit it's the sort of anal kind of perfectionism kind of reminds me a bit of Vi in some ways. I know it's not that kind of.
No, I know what you're saying. Yeah, it's not the same music. Yeah.
The mixing, mastering, the playing, the writing, the engineering, the kind of like overarching kind of god of it all is kind of. I mean, and is it kind of reminds me of the kind of skill sets that one has to have for that, and
to be in the position where the vocals become the overarching, key aspect of it, as compared to, just being the guitarist and happening to be able to sing a bit, which you see very often.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away from anybody who's writing good music and singing and is mainly a guitar player. But
my analogy there is actually really, really apt in that sense, because that's a good point. I tried to do a bit of singing in the kind of mid and stuff. And I actually quite liked it, but
me too. Little Alligator's a great song.
All About Eve. I mean, I think it's fantastic.
Amazing.
But I think it's fair to say that Martin's sort of technically as a singer has
achieved a higher level,
incredible level of ability with his vocals.
Yeah, there's a very, very, very satisfying note at the end of this new single. That's a great, great, great thing. It's really good. But also, what's really cool is for the guys who, I think Martin was possibly originally a little bit worried about this, but I don't think he's anymore, because he's so artistically behind this new thing that he's doing. And let's face it, you see a lot of guys go for this kind of thing with the video and stuff, and it just doesn't convince a lot of the time.
No, this is video doesn't convince.
Both the video and the vibe and the performance doesn't really convince you. It's a guitar player basically who's, Martin's got the whole rock star vibe going,
The production level is, I mean, not obviously the music, but the actual video production as well is just off the charts. Cool.
It's been in the works for a long time. It's been thought about very, very heavily. When I remember hearing the demos this is the thing with Martin's demos, and he would say this as well if we had him on, and he may have said this because we've had him on a few times. His demos are better than most people's final products, which is a bit weird, really. Yeah. Which I think is why I was a bit like, why is this album not out already? Because when I heard it back in 2018, possibly, I'm trying to think when Martin and I were on tour, it was, as far as I was concerned, the final products. The only thing that wasn't finished is the lyrics. And this is how good the vocals were, because the lyrics, he was reading, I think something like, and I'm getting this wrong, but it's something like the user agreement for Waves plugins or something. He was just reading that for the lyrics, because he didn't have any, but he had the melody. And it worked really well. It sounded great.
I think the thing I really like about it, like when the first track came out, is it Something New, the first track? Epic 8-minute thing. And I dug it the first time. But it actually was a major earworm for me over about the course of 7 to 10 days. It was that riff, and then the kind of like hooker part was just in my head like all the time, and the whole thing kind of grew on me too. And I really, really love that first track. And there's something almost a bit like retro, but like modern retro future sort of nostalgia kind of vibes about it. Like obviously there's the Toto Dream Theater kind of prog thing.
Those are the overarching comments that are under the videos as well.
And I'm sure Martin, we'll have to talk to him about it sometime, but I'm sure those are,
definitely compliments.
Clear influences with it. And the sort of synth sound is quite prominent throughout.
Very upfront, yeah.
I've heard so far. And it kind of gives it that sort of, future nostalgia kind of vibe to it that super welcoming. And in some ways, I think I said this to you guys when it first came out, that single, in some ways because of that, it almost sounds more fresh and more modern than a lot of the other sort of air quotes, I'm air quoting now for the audio listeners, the scene kind of thing, the modern guitar scene. It almost sounds more fresh than that.
Yeah, so this is the thing. This is why I'm wondering, it'd be fascinating to ask how it sounds to, I don't think you could ever tangibly answer this question because their experience is so different to ours, but having grown up in the Toto Dream Theater era, the original era, because when I hear that, I don't hear modern Dream Theater. What?
We didn't grow up with Toto really though, did we?
No, but we grew up with that sound in our head. So that 90s, mid-90s Dream Theater, very synth heavy, very harmonically rich kind of prog. I never think of it as prog metal, the images and words thing, because to me it's images and words era Dream Theater that I'm hearing there. I'm not hearing modern Dream Theater.
It's still a lot more. I think Dream Theater is still a lot more metal sounding than what Martin's producing. Martin is much more on the kind of yacht rock, not yacht rock, the kind of the Toto kind of rock thing.
Yeah, but regardless, whether we grew up with it or not, it was a sound that we were intensely familiar with in our guitar growing up as a guitar player. Whereas I'd be very intrigued to see sonically and texturally what much younger guitar players make of it as compared to the very scene, whatever that is, poppy gent stuff that's out at the moment. I'd be very intrigued to see what they make of it, because I don't know if they have that sound in their head or if they're even familiar with it. They'll be familiar with Dream Theater because they're guitar players, but will they be familiar with that part of Dream Theater's sound? And will they be familiar with Toto and that kind of verse chorus, quite poppy kind of structure that's going on with this complex prog in the background? It'd be very interesting to see what they think about that.
I'm just thinking about the whole, because we talked a little bit about imitators and stuff last week, or, the idea of trying to imitate somebody. It's interesting that, some of the guys that are out now are all sort of trying to sort of imitate each other in a way. Whereas the stuff that's coming through in Martin's music is such, I wouldn't say it's niche, but it's like way back over there. So there will be quite a lot of people that hear it that didn't hear that stuff the first time round. So
that's what I mean.
Yeah, they're getting it at a different kind of angle. Whereas a lot of the other guys, it's sort of they're sort of trying to imitate stuff that's now. If you see what I mean, I'm not saying Martin's trying to imitate the other stuff. I just mean like
that's just what he's saying. He's in his head.
Yeah, there's something about. I feel like trying to keep up with the Joneses now and try and fit in with the scene and imitate your peers to some degree and try and get that sound going is very different to somebody that's potentially going back who also has a very deep understanding of music and can, you know what I mean? They're not playing traits that they see around them. They're going, these are my influences. These are some of the sounds that they used, but I'm going to compose this stuff that's kind of in the same vein.
I just think from a quality perspective and songwriting and complete package perspective, it's not something you hear so much these days from solo artists, from individual guys who've done, like I said earlier, that process from start to finish. You hear these kind of, because it's not instrumental music, which is a different thing. The production level of instrumental music has gone through thanks to guys like Pliny, for example, has gone through the absolute roof. It's nuts what these guys are putting out. But vocal music with chorus, verse, chorus structures, bridges, so on and so forth. Classic songwriting, but with amazing riffs and really, really great hooks and choruses, so on and so forth, with amazing guitar playing and amazing vocals with fantastic production. That's something you normally associate with a named band, not with an individual guitarist, solo artist. So I find that quite interesting because it's quite a rare thing these days, I think. As I say, I'm struggling. I might just be being really forgetful, but I'm struggling to think of an equivalent nothing's coming to mind immediately that's of that level as a solo artist, singer, guitar player producing something that good. Certainly
in this style or this area of
in a singer-songwriter vein there's plenty of it, but in this particular area I usually associate that with a it's usually a named band, where there's sort of big money behind it kind of thing. This sounds like hopefully this isn't taken the wrong way. It sounds like big money projects, a big money project to me.
And looks like it as well.
And looks like it, yeah. It's got all the kind of vibes of a big money project, which is a compliment. I don't mean that in a bad way. It's a real compliment. It's amazing what he's done. It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So I hope it's a huge success. And what I was going to say before, I forgot to finish my thought, but for the guitar-y guys who got into Martin because of the guitar playing from the original album and End in Itself, like the solo on this new track is phenomenal. It's like this fusion-y, proggy, harmonically rich solo with all the techniques you could ever want in there. And again, it's like the way I described it to you, BB, earlier was, this is really amazing to me now, but if I'd heard this in 1995, it would have changed my life beyond all recognition, as images and words did back in the day. It's really, really fantastic stuff, really good. So it's well worth a listen for anybody who hasn't heard it, which I think would be strange with our audience, but if you haven't, go and check it out.
That would be quite remarkable if someone that didn't know who Martin Miller was at the podcast. Well, but yeah, we'll link it in the show notes and video description and stuff. It's interested to. In fact, I haven't finished. I think it was today, or I noticed anyway.
Today, yeah.
The album came out. Yeah, okay, so the album came out today. I haven't had a chance to get all the way through it yet. But yeah, I'm very much enjoying it. And congrats to Martin for
huge congrats.
This monumental project, really. That
if my webcam steams up, my dog has just dropped the most horrific air biscuit, so I apologise. Well, I don't know why I'm apologising to you, but
just be glad we don't have the technology for audio, video, and
smell-o-vision.
Smell-o-vision, yeah.
If I keel over, that's why. Oh dear.
So gear news. Looks like Marshall has been sold off, or partially sold off. So it's been family owned since the beginning, I guess. And it was a couple of days ago. It came out that the company that had partnered with them back in the 2010,
Zounds.
I think, Zounds or something, to make all of their kind of, what I might say, questionable lifestyle branding products.
Questionable lifestyle.
Some of which, by the way, has been reviewed exceptionally. The higher end stuff has been reviewed really, really well.
Well, let me just finish this. So they partnered with this kind of Swedish lifestyle brand to make things like Bluetooth speakers and sunglasses and
in-ear headphone,
lunch
whatever.
boxes, like clothing and fridges and all that stuff. Yeah, as trading on the nostalgia legacy of Jimmy and Eric and all those guys have used the Marshall products over the years, and Slash, etc. And so I think it's these guys, Zounds, that have kind of like got the sort of bought them. I think the family is still going to be a majority stakeholder, or certainly have good stake still in the company. But it's just it made me think, potentially is Laney the kind of last family owned kind of amp maker in terms of like the big old school guys?
You mean in the UK?
Yeah. Is that because
I don't think. Yeah,
Orange and Vox are not, and I don't think. But
that leads me to think that possibly is the case. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's literally in the family, isn't it? Because it's James.
James Laney. Lyndon obviously is still around as well, involved with the company. It's made me wonder. So other than the fact that my Silver Jubilee is now worth 10 times what it was worth a couple of days ago.
You may be reaching a bit
joking.
there,
I'm joking. What's the deal then? Are they being manufactured elsewhere? No.
From what I understand it's supposed to be a business as usual thing for now, in the same way as like when Gibson bought Mesa Boogie, and it seems like Boogie is still just making amps, they're not selling them to Europeans or I think Marshall are just going to continue for now, but who knows?
Right.
And I think again, because it's been still like the family will still have a say in part of it, at least.
Because there were two things there that were quite interesting from a sort of British perspective, if you like. The first was that they were made, the good stuff was made in the UK, which was quite interesting, still made in the UK. And the second thing was that it was one of the very few products that still we didn't have that horrible UK price hump on. It was one of the very few things left that like you can buy a Silver Jubilee for around £1,000, whereas in the US they were like $2,500 or whatever, nearly $3,000. Whereas I was wondering whether now, because of Brexit, that we're suddenly going to find that a Silver Jubilee is costing us £1,700,
Well, it's interesting, like even like the hand-wired 59 Plex is like 15, was it 1,500 or
something like that, yeah.
So I there's definitely, there've always been the UK hand-built Marshalls have always been relatively affordable to us. But I don't know long term what's going to happen there.
Because Laney are building more and more stuff in the UK now. You know, the Lionheart series is all built in the UK.
The Lionheart back from China, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
the Lionheart started in the UK, then they moved it out to China and they brought it back again.
Very proudly says on the back, you know, designed and made in the UK, and they are very proud of it. It's a big deal, you know.
But Marshall have been like throughout. They've been on a roller coaster through the decades of like whole, you know, swathe of different products in terms of sort of quantity and quality and stuff. It's just I think, do you remember your guys' first Marshall?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think pretty much still got it.
And
I might have had a little.
Yours is a legit one though, isn't it, Dan? Yours is actually a valve.
Yours I'm sort of tempted to buy off you actually, Dan, because the TSL, I mean, it's not a DSL, but it's not a bad amp, you know. It makes some good sounds. Yeah, I don't think it's a little bit. You know. It's a little bit like the 900 to the 800. You know.
Yeah, that's a really good. Yeah, so the JCM 800 is the one everybody really loves, but the 900 can be a little hit and miss.
But then it's one of those things where I do wonder whether some of this stuff goes down in myth and legend, and then actually it's not really that true, because these guys from Studio Rats, who we should have a shout out for actually, because they do some amazing videos. That guy's a really great. They're both great guys, but what's the guitar? Is it Paul?
Paul is the bald guy.
Yeah, that's the guy I'm talking about. Yeah,
I think. Anyway, apologies if I've got you.
Oh yeah, really sorry. I probably don't listen, but really, really great YouTube channel. And he did a video with the JCM 900. I actually think it belonged to the other guy who's. Oh yeah. I mean, I've watched so many other videos. I'm really sorry if they do. I'm sure they don't, but I'm really sorry if they do listen, because I know who you guys are. I just got brain failure. And the JCM 900 sounded amazing. Absolutely amazing. So the TSL, I think, is a very kind of sullied amp that actually probably sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's fine.
You know,
TSL from the early 2000s is supposed to be, if you can get a hold of one of those, I think
like a JCM 2000.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think they're pretty cool. But but they've had all sorts. Like my first one was the Valve State 8080.
Yes, me too. That's why I'm partially deaf in my right ear. Because it was just, my parents, I've told plenty of people this story, but my parents, when I was learning to play guitar and started in 95, had a farmhouse that was being renovated and then a barn next to it, which was just empty. And I used to sit in the barn, had power with the Marshall Valve State, and then like their tape player and CD player. And I would listen to Images and Words, the Black Album, some early Iron Maiden stuff, and just have that thing fully cranked and sit with my right ear to it, just going for it full blast as I could. And so I'm partially deaf in my right ear now, because that thing kicks out some serious high end.
And it sounded so bad as well.
Yeah, but they're really iconic they're really super iconic in the metal scene.
Oh, God.
Like, you honestly go onto YouTube and find John Brown's channel and check out his demo of the Valve State 8080.
I'm going to have to do that.
Totally, you have a look. It's totally
watch it, but I'm going to save it because the nostalgia on that's going to be.
It's really revered in certain sects of the metal scene.
Is this like the PV Bandit kind of myth though?
No, it's not a myth. It's not a myth. Genuinely, people love that amp.
No, but that's what I mean. Like everybody says they hated the PV Bandit, and then it became cool to say, "Oh, the PV Bandit's a great amp."
Although, admittedly, I did once see Sean Baxter do a gig. With a PV Bandit and a DS1, I think it was, and it was absolutely outrageous tone. But I don't think that was just to do with the amp. I think that might have been Sean being amazing.
Oh, they had a PV Bandit at school. That was the school amp.
It's the head version. He does a demo with the head version.
The 8100.
It's the same amp, basically.
Okay. Valve State 8080, man. That was the thing.
The 12-inch combo.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. I've some pictures of it.
But the thing is, it looked the part because it had the gold front panel. It had the knobs. The knobs were correct, and it had that horrible rectangular switch you had to push in that always felt like it was going to snap off for the power.
But the thing is, my good friend, shout out to him, Ninja Badger, Jason Dodd, who I used to jam with as a kid in bands and things. His dad, Jack, was a guitar player in bands, and he had all the cool shit. He had like an actual Les Paul standard from the sort of 80s when they got good again. He had like what was it called? There was a series of tube Marshalls in the 90s, early 90s that were really, really good. But
Marshalls,
Marshall, but like
not the vintage modern.
No. This was like 94, 95 or something, and it wasn't the DSL, and it wasn't like an original kind of or a reissue. It was something in the 90s they're doing that was like a vintage type. I can't remember it now. Anyway, he had
not
one
the
of those.
JTM.
Nope.
I had a JTM 45.
It's very tweedy,
No.
not tweedy sound, but like the kind of look of it was kind of like.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I had one.
It was so cool. Anyway, he had all that great stuff, and then went at band rehearsals, so he would get to use his dad's gear for like our jams, and he'd have like the real USA Les Paul standard, and he'd have this like, real Marshall tube amp and the Mesa Boogie V-twin pedal thing.
I had one of those.
Oh, I dreamt of a Mesa Boogie V-twin.
Yeah, I had two Mesa Boogie V-twins in my life, but I had a buddy very similar.
But I turned up with my Marshall Valve State 8080.
Yes.
And I'd be like, and my DS1.
You had all the high end.
Not it wasn't even a Japanese one.
No, of course not. But my buddy, so obviously you were into the blues world at that point, so the Les Paul would have like really, made sense and stuff, and the kind of tweedy Marshall. My buddy, very very close friend of mine, that I used to sit and we'd watch all the Dream Theater and Steve Vai gigs with on sort of VHS. He had a 5150 head, the original 5150, a JS 1000 in gold, and he had a Boss GP 100. And so at the time, I think it was the GP 100, the gold-faced one. It was the very first COSM unit. That thing was like super high-end. So it was the first time I'd ever heard, because I had a Zoom 1010. Which I thought was amazing. I thought this was
10. Was it 1010 or 2020? What did I have?
No, 2020. You luxury boy. I had a 1010, and I thought this thing sounded amazing. But then I heard the GP 100. I think it's the GP 100.
I had the Zoom 2020, mate.
Oh, posh boy. I had what the hell was it called? An ape something. Anyway, I'm getting off on I can't remember what the name of it was, but some horrible thing. Then I had the Zoom 1010, and this guy had this GP 100, 5150, and a JS 1000. Oh my god, I was so jealous.
When did you get that TSL done? Because
when I was about
a proper amp.
Yeah, when I was about 16, me and a mate from
was that
school.
Used or was it new? Because
I can't remember. But me and I was in this. It's a real shame that MySpace doesn't exist anymore, because the music was on there, and you can't get to any of that anymore.
Tom's going to check it.
You can't get to it anymore. But it was this like little kind of technical sort of punk band that I was in with a few mates from school. We both ended up with like the same amps, and then we both kind of graduated to these TSLs. I think we both had like Line 6 Spider 2s. Was the red ones? Was that Spider 2?
Oh, I can't remember.
Flextone 2, right? I remember because my dad made me carry it through Manchester to get back to the car. And I'm like 60-year-old skinny Tim Wheeler arms, just like carrying this valve amp through Manchester. Like, please don't rob me. But yeah, I've had it since then. I've probably only used it about 3 times because it is proper overkill. What? But maybe I'll get that and put it in the back of here, because that's good.
Totally, that's
good fodder.
That's proper legit vibes. If you've got a,
I've still got that and a foot switch. I had a cab for it for years, but I ended up selling it to Nick Harrison, I think. I just wasn't using it.
What? I mean, you've only got a lamp on that. That desk looks big enough to stick a TSL.
It is.
Well, what are you doing? Go and get it now.
It's not in here. I've got to get it from my mum's, under my mum's stairs.
Then you need a Marshall cam close up.
So we've just worked out by the magic of Zoom chat that it appears that the amp that BB was lusting over when he was his mate, this Marshall tweed thing, Ninja Badger had, is actually the amp that I had when I started Leeds College of Music, which is quite funny. Yeah. I hated it because I wanted a high gain Marshall, and it wasn't a high gain Marshall anyway at all.
Awesome though. So I remember that.
Yeah, for your bluesy tastes, not for my high gain Holsworthy shreddy tastes. No, not good enough. But I was just remembering, you're talking about the Spider. When the modelling thing first started, the very early days, there was a super, super expensive modelling amp with a name that began with J or something.
Johnson Millennium.
Is that, yeah, what the hell was that thing?
It
was line 6, was it?
I'm pretty sure.
I thought it was pre any of that stuff. It was one of the first, and it had a real funky look to it.
None
of the kids will remember that one.
I mean, I don't remember that one. I'm not that much.
Oh my
of a
God,
kid,
really?
but-
This thing was big money back in the day, Dan.
maybe it was a Line 6, but it was. I
don't think it was.
Okay, it was the Johnson Millennium guitar amp.
Would that have almost been like the equivalent of an X-Effects?
Well, it was such a new concept at the time. You know,
Digitech.
Was it?
It possibly. Yeah. Because the faceplate looks like the
GP 2102.
2102. Yeah, 21.
Oh man, we're having a proper like retro geek out session here. Dan's not involved. Sorry, Dan. Yeah, this thing was. I mean, how much was it when it came out?
That was it. So it was the Digitech 2112 and the 2102, or the 2120. That was it. And it's the same kind of faceplate as that. So that was it. A Johnson Millennium. Man, all the young guys listen to this just going to
think like, what are you talking about? And I bet you anything, it sounded like absolute
ass.
Absolutely, because modeling back then was just horrible.
I don't even know if that was modeling in the sense that we think of it now, though. I think I did think.
Well, it was DSP based, I guess. So, but yeah, I probably not. There was certainly no IRs or, you know,
it wasn't like point to point sort of.
No,
like,
component modeling kind of vibe.
Modeling. I don't think anyway. Yeah, I thought Line 6 was the first people to do that. Really.
What's the modern equivalent of the sort of start? No, I wouldn't say starter pack, because I had one of those. Like, actually, the first Marshall I got was in one of those the Marshall Rock Kit or whatever, where you get like a guitar and an amp.
Oh yeah,
Dawson's used to ship them out all the time. They had this like black sort of Strat copy, this little Marshall amp, some picks with Marshall written all over them. So the next stage after that, what's like the modern equivalent of that now?
The guitar.
Yeah.
Well, they still exist. All those things.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
The original Sound on Sound review from August 1998.
That's the beautiful thing about Sound on Sound. All the old reviews are available for free.
Yeah.
Is there a price on it? It usually is on Sound on Sound. Look at all those effects. Wow. And all the amp models are named manufacturer models. That's quite something. Good range of very usable sounds.
Second, there was also the AX2 from Line 6. Do you remember that? That was the same time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Yes. It had a front panel that looked like some kind of industrial washing machine selection screen. Amazing. Wow. God, this is going back.
This is such an odd concept, because usually when people are talking about like, you know, vintage gear, they're talking about like, you know, really early Strats and Les Pauls and stuff, or you know, like the first modelers, Line 6 vintage gear.
Veered way off topic there, but Marshall, I mean, they're going to be. I imagine like things are going to. Well, I cross my fingers that things are going to still go. That they're going to still be making good high end sort of classic British amps, but. Who knows? But even if they're not, there's so much on the used market. I think if anybody ever wants a Marshall, then it's not like you're going to be hard pushed to find one in terms of availability. But in the UK, there's like you're just tripping over Marshalls in the street. You know?
Yeah, that would be a shame, though, a real shame if that market suddenly, because you can see what happens when Josh.
Oh God. The bad monkey thing.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's like, I'm not, the guy's hilarious, you know, but it just shows you what the guitar market is. And, you know, I'm quite comfortable saying that these people are morons. I'm sorry, but they are. I hope this doesn't happen to because again, I made that joke about my Silver Jubilee being obviously I'm not expecting that. But I hope people don't take advantage of it to have this weird kind of pre-Zound Marshall vibe where they suddenly put like 500 quid on the price. Because
I don't think so.
I hope not. Because, but then you wouldn't have thought a Bad Monkey would be selling for tens of thousands of pounds on. But nobody bought it, I guess. But
no, and it's already dropped back to a more sensible price already. Looking good, at you know. So and because of the ubiquity, I mean, it's. I suppose the thing with like a Dumble or a Clon or whatever, or a Burst, there is an actual finite number that that organically inflates the price by supply and demand. Whereas with things like this Digitech Bad Monkey or a Marshall valve tube amp from, you know, whatever era. There is so many hundreds and thousands, well, literally thousands and thousands and thousands of them, that it's, even if you get that kind of like baity kind of video viral effect that Josh did with the Bad Monkey video, eventually it'll just like regress to the mean, because there's just so many, and the supply and demand is, you know.
Well, that's all it is, isn't it? I mean, although the other thing is, it's not just literally the number of them, which is your supply and demand thing. It's the legendary status of having, like with Dumble, one guy that's behind the whole thing, and like a name. Because Jim Marshall is not making, obviously, has not been making Marshall amps for a long time. So it's the brand, and the brand doesn't have as much legendary. Obviously the brand is legendary, but it's not one dude making all of these things by hand. Whereas if you've got like a Klon or a Dumble, it's the same guy who's toiling away making these things.
It's not extent, just. But I think the guitar players, we are such idiots that like the components become the thing. So it's certain chips within your little green pedal that, you know, become like. And okay, you can get certain artists, maybe if it's not the guy that's making them, but it's certain artists that are so godlike.
John Mayer.
Well, yeah.
TS9.
Stevie.
Is it TS9?
TS10 for Mayer, but
Mayer 10.
Yeah. You get certain artists that are so stratospheric in their sort of influence that can take the product into another level of not scarcity, but desirability, that even if it's not just one guy making it, it's
you get that bit of mythology sprinkled on top, doesn't it? Because if someone's like, you know, this guy has this pedal that he only even has, you know, he's got this pedal that's only on one, but that makes all the difference, and you've got to get one. And it's like NFTs. It's basically a crypto scam, the Bad Monkey thing.
Since watching Andy Timmons do literal, one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen actually as a guitar player, watching him do his breakdown of his tone, and gradually, obviously, he's got the Lone Stars in stereo behind him on this fairly kind of standard hotel room. It wasn't even a good room. And he's switching on each pedal in turn for his clean tone. And there's like 3 drive pedals going in the background, all on almost nothing. And, you know, a skeptic, if he hadn't heard each of them being switched on at a time, would be like, what are you on about? It made an enormous difference. It was unbelievable. And it does, you know, I'm not suggesting for a second that there pedal needs to be that there pedal with that battery in and that cable. But in the right hands, having that cascading gain going into the front of a tube amp is just, my word. Yeah, that wasn't how he said it. I love that there pedal.
Marshall, I think, have done like, I think what's been so cool in the last little while, I think they've made some really interesting things, like the Studio series, the SV20, like the Plexi with genuine
proper big tube amps. Big power tubes in, which is the real big deal.
So it's EL34, and it's got an effects loop. It's 20 watts, and they sound, and again,
really well built. They look great.
Studio Rats guys did a really great video on that. Fantastic amp. The SC, was it the
the SC20 and the SV20, the classic and the vintage. So it's a JCM 800 and a Plexi.
And a Jubilee as well, didn't they?
Yeah.
So it's like they've done some really interesting, cool sort of like twists on the classics to a high level, and for us UK guys, being affordable as well.
£700.
Yeah.
Well, they were. I think they're about £800 now, but still, you know.
Well, I mean, if in the scheme of things, that's, you know, if you were looking at any of the US kind of brands, you know, you're talking like triple that minimum.
Well, my Dirty Shirley Mini is directly comparable because it's a 20 watt, it's hand wired, but I don't think the new ones are though. Or maybe maybe that one is, but the what's it called? The Pink Taco is not hand wired, I don't think anymore. That's a 20 watt head. And they're £1,700, I think, possibly something like that in the UK. Whereas the SV20, you can get basically the same sounds out of it, especially if you kick it with a drive pedal in the front. And it cleans up beautifully, and it's loud as, I mean, I've had one cranked in that old Dawson studio, and it was nuts how loud it was. Well, they're amazing. £700.
I've come around to the conclusion that And this is, I haven't mentioned this on the podcast because we haven't really done it, but I've recently acquired a Friedman BE50 Deluxe, and it's an incredible deal. And basically, this what I've come to realize is that all of these kind of like takes on the kind of Marshalls thing, they've improved it in one sense, but at the same time, they kind of polish it off and round it off and kind of make it like a, what's the word I'm looking for? A less visceral, raw kind of thing. It's like it's objectively better, and I prefer it, but it's not a Marshall. It's not kind of, it doesn't sound like there's kind of raspy kind of guttural kind of bark to it in the same way as like an actual Marshall does. And it's sort of like backhanded compliment in some ways to them, but there is something undeniably authentic about like an actual plexi that's cranked to blowing up. It really is. I think that the Friedman, the BE, is phenomenal, and it's the idealized, perfectly polished monster of a juiced up Marshall sound. And to be honest, maybe I'll talk about that another time, but it's almost the perfect amp if you like Marshalls, because it's also got an incredible clean channel to it.
Well, it's the perfect amp if you don't take it anywhere.
Yeah. It's not that heavy, to be honest, but yeah, it's loud as holy balls. But yeah, if you look at all of the kind of American or very sort of modern takes on the Marshall thing, on the British sound, or Swedish sound as it now needs to be known.
Oh, don't do that. No love. I mean, I love the Swedes, but
Well, it's as Zound is a Swedish company, so we were joking in Slack the other day that now that you're getting that classic Swedish crunch.
A bit of ABBA Marshall tone.
Anyway, yeah, I just think that so many companies have made incredible high gain sort of British inspired sounds that kind of round and polish it off, and I think
I've just realised how happy Yngve must be. Get his Marshalls for cheap.
Yeah.
That took a while to sink in, didn't it?
I was like, it's just because you mentioned him last episode as well.
I have a clause in my contract.
Yeah.
I have to mention him every episode.
It's got to be relevant now. You've got to try and get Yngve into every episode.
There we go.
It's got to be relevant.
So that's the new Dan's challenge or Tom's challenge.
Yeah.
Ongoing.
Yeah, it is interesting though that like of all the amps I've got here, and there's quite a few really, really nice amps here, the one that has the best playing feel and dynamics is easily that plexi that I built. And I'm not for a second suggesting it's because I built it. That's definitely not the reason it sounds good. It's just the circuit. Is that small box 50 plexi circuit is just such a simple circuit as well. And it's phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal.
Well, the BE50 doesn't have the small box channel.
Yeah.
Because instead it has the Bucks and Betty for the clean instead of the small box. So that's quite curious. I'd be interested to, that's what we should do.
Well, the clean, because there isn't a clean channel.
We should shoot out your hand-built one with the Silver Jubilee and the BE50. That'd be cool.
Well, we definitely have to do a Silver Jubilee BE50 shoot, and we'll probably video that.
We'll have to figure.
Dude, I'm very, very, very tempted when I get back from Germany to drive over to yours and try that out, or to borrow it for a week and try it out and see if I want it.
Knock on my mum's house and like,
oh yeah, that'd be a bit weird, wouldn't it?
Well, the reason I've done this is because I have the kind of, while at the moment I have the space and the ability to turn it up and crank it, and so I've never owned like a big head or a stack or anything like that. I've always just had combos or little lunchbox things. So while I've got the space and the luxury to sort of crank things, I thought, well, why don't do it? Get a big head and.
Well, it's like I said to you, you need to get rid of that bathroom downstairs, or at least keep the toilet and remove the shower and stick an ISO booth in there, like I've got here, and mic it up. It's the greatest experience. And then use the Axe Effects 2 that you've got as imagine what that would have been in the 80s as a digital effects processor in full stereo. Get a Royal 121 and SM57 and go for it.
The thing is that the Fractal is so good, I don't really need to do that. The whole point of having the real amp is just to literally just crank the shit out of it and
Well,
I had the Master on 5 the other day, and it was.
I can't remember if we've talked about this on the podcast, but obviously you and I have done some fairly extensive tests with the Silver Jubilee, and the same. We did proper like for like with the cab testing of my Silver Jubilee with the amp model in the Axe-Fx 3, and they were literally identical. There was no difference. You couldn't hear or feel any difference. And you said you did that with the BE50 and you couldn't feel or tell any difference. Is that right?
Yep, I can dial it in exactly the same. So this is the crazy thing. Like, so I've on the Axe-Fx, I use like I've got, I kind of live on the Friedman and the Dumbles patchet sounds models. Those are the kind of sounds I gravitate to. And on the Friedman, I use the particular V3, which is like the voicing with a switch over to the right. And so this is how messed up my kind of how I'm coming to amps from, is that I've tried to dial in the real head to sound like the Fractal preset.
And are they the same amp? The model of, is it a BE50?
No, but the circuit is...
The circuit's the same.
It's the same channel and same circuit. So the BE and the HBE, there's a few differences in the power amp. So there's some really cool controls on the power amp of the BE50 Deluxe that the BE100 doesn't have. But, essentially, the gain structure and the voicing is the same. So... And it is remarkable. If I pretty much set it up with the controls, the dials in the same place, with the same, voicing switch onto the V3, it's very similar. But the point to it, really, as I say, is that it was such an incredible deal. And while I've got this sort of space to do it, to enjoy it, in the middle of the day when no one's around in the countryside, I can just crank it up and rock it.
I love the idea of that little country road going past your front. Like every time you see a car, you blast the power cord at full volume and blow cars off the road into the fields. Bye.
It's such an amazing, and the thing is, I've always been, one of the other reasons I've done it, and this is a practical thing, is I've always been a little bit anxious or apprehensive about playing loud. I've been a little bit like not comfortable with that. I've always enjoyed playing like clean amps with a pedal platform with a drive pedal and more moderate volumes, or playing through modeling things. And so wanted to nudge me out of my comfort zone with this. What I want to do, what I have been doing slightly, is just practicing through the Friedman, turned up really loud, plugged bone dry into the front with no reverb or no delay, and just trying to shred.
But isn't it
used to that? And it's so interesting, the experience. It's such a weird, interesting experience.
Yeah, but the thing I find really amazing about that, because I do that quite a lot here, but I do have one door, which is the little door that shuts the downstairs under the stairs cupboard.
Yeah.
Then I leave all the other doors open. So it's still insanely loud, because the Silver Jubilee is 100 watts. But the dynamic range that you have available to yourself is shockingly,
it's phenomenal.
A, addictive, and B, difficult to control.
But also it is, but also you get a compression, and we've talked about this before, I think, on the show, about the compression of a clean sound sustains differently at those kind of volumes with the tube amp than even really great modeling stuff is not quite the same. So you can have a much less gain on the amp.
Yeah, definitely.
And still have all the sustain. And so it makes it, in some ways, it's horrible to play, because I'm like, I'm anxious about it being so loud and so unwieldy, a raging beast. But I think if you get used to that, if I push through that painful part of the process, it could be a really, really useful skill to acquire, and a really pleasurable, enjoyable thing, because as I say, that sustain and control and the dynamic range that you talk about is just phenomenal. It's a really...
Well, it's why, if you're playing on a really good stage with an incredible tube amp, like when I played in Germany with Martin's band, I didn't have a Quad Cortex with me. Or in fact, I did have a Quad Cortex with me, but I wasn't using it. I asked for a Lionheart, and the Lionheart was fairly cranked, because it's a massive room in a big stage, and then it was mic'd. And even at 20 watts, that amp is loud, on stage. And I had a dual fusion in the front kicking its ass as well, so it was really, really loud. And an incredibly addictive experience if the mix is good and the sound is good in the room, to be stood there with a good band playing lead lines with not that much gain and finding suddenly you're using dynamic range that you never use at home because it's not available to you. And it's a totally different experience. You kind of come out of yourself in some ways, which is hard when it's bone dry and you're in the room on your own. But in a proper mix, loud on stage, it's such a liberating experience.
Do you feel that the technique is easier as well? Then? I feel like the legato technique thing is it sort of lends itself to that really, really nicely because you're getting such a clean tone, pure tone, but all the sustain and compressing. So yeah, I just find it's the only other experience I've had is there's one patch I've got on the Fractal stuff, which is one of the Dumble ODS 100s that has a similar kind of effect that even when there's not that much gain, it's a very pleasing legato sound to play.
Well, I find my left hand can relax so much more and still the notes bounce out of the fretboard really easily.
Yeah,
it's a very, very pleasurable feeling. And it's the very first note that you play, you know immediately if it's going to happen. And if it does, you completely settle and relax. But if it's the opposite, it's a horrible, horrible experience. I mean, this is just classic guitar player territory where you play the first note and you're like, shit, my tone is not. This is what, for me, tone is all about. It's not literally about what you're hearing. It's about that combination of what you're feeling and hearing. Because if it feels good, it's going to sound good to you anyway, you know.
Have you ever cranked that Marshall down, or have you ever cranked an amp and played through a massive stacked, cranked Raging amp?
I've done, I gigged it a few times when I was like 16, 17.
And you punk band?
And I think I think the most we had it at was about 4.
Is it 100 watts?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the SJ. Oh, there's not much difference, to be fair, between a 50-watt Marshall and a 100-watt Marshall.
In decibels, no. It's the feel and response, isn't it?
And like how clean it'll get as well.
But long time ago. I can't even remember the last time I used it.
See, they make so much more sense these days. I mean, like, what use would you have had in the last, I don't know, like take the last 5 years away, the decade before that, what use would you have had for a TSL or a DSL or a Silver Jubilee? You know, unless you were out gigging it every single night, they're useless. But now, oh, nice work. Oh, there's a lot in there. You totally can use them. You know, you've got that Torpedo. What is that? Torpedo Live?
Yep.
Behind you. There you go. Get it on that thing. Get it on that desk. It's going to look awesome as well.
I will, next time we do this, it will be on there.
There's something about the Marshall red and black switches next to each other that just does it for me. You know, the big chunky switches.
Yeah, it's weird stuff like that, isn't it? I really like the little, it's like the red boost knob on a Laney.
Oh, yeah.
It's just a small touch.
Well, I've got an interesting story about that I can't tell you yet, but I'll be able to tell you soon.
If it's not that they're going to build only me a Seafoam green one, I don't care.
that has been mentioned numerous times, Dan. So if we keep mentioning it, it might happen eventually. But it's a ridiculously good idea.
One final thing I would say about the Friedman stuff and the modern ones in terms of defense or like in their favor is the ability, Tom, you just mentioned about the ability, being able to use these things. The master volume taper on the Friedman is amazing. So
that's good.
It's actually usable at low volumes in a way that is not just fizzing out and being completely a farty piece of shit. So you can totally use this thing and get really great tone, like with it in the 50-watt mode. Don't even have to go down to 25, and it actually sounds and feels pretty good at like almost talking volume, which you can do because of the taper on the master volume. Whereas so many of the, you know, obviously I don't know, how's the Silver Jubilee for that?
The Silver Jubilee is not bad. The Mezza Boogie is shocking. The Mezza Boogie is one of those where basically it'd be like having a kitchen tap where you either got a drip or the whole thing would just go. There's just nothing in between at all. And the presence knob on the power amp is amazing. The presence knob does nothing all the way until like from 9 to 10, and then it's like an ice pick to the ears. It's really weird. But that thing, that There's so
Sharon
Marshalls.
Stone.
Everybody knows how to dial. Well, most people know how to dial in a Marshall. Like Marshalls sound good with everything cranked. Like you just go and crank everything.
Back to the Future.
Yeah. Or you basically do the thing where you, with the plexi, where you jumper the channels and you dial in whichever amounts of normal and whatever, treble or high, whatever that you want. And that's a beautiful thing. Boogies are a pain in the butthole to dial in. And it's like, it was funny with the Neural DSP. I think I mentioned this to you. Yeah. The Neural DSP 2C, so what's it called? Sorry.
2C Plus.
Sorry, brain failure, 2C Plus, which is sort of similar to my Mesa Boogie preamp that I've got here. I can't talk. The Mesa Boogie preamp that I've got here with the 50
you had.
It's got nothing to do with that. I just can't say the word. The Mesa Boogie Studio preamp that I've got here and the power amp. If you dial in a lead sound and then you crank the bass, it's just a farty, horrible mess. It's awful. And the number of presets that I saw that had that bass control cranked, it's like, I just know this is going to sound terrible before I even play a note. And it did. Absolutely
awful. Shouts out to old Leon Todd there for teaching me everything I ever known about dialing in a Boogie Mark series, because he's just the king of that stuff. And
well, it's one of the things that's actually really difficult about that amp, because because they have the Studio Pre has a shared EQ for both channels. So you can dial in a really great sounding drive tone with the bass dialed out. Then if you switch back to the clean channel for that kind of glassy boogie thing, which sounds amazing, by the way, if the bass is up, it sounds shocking because the bass is all the way down.
Yeah. So
it's not really meant to be used as a kind of dual channel thing.
Yeah. Well, actually as well, because I didn't know this, but on the Neural plugin, which I presume is like the original amp, it's cascading that they actually have an effect on one another.
It's very confusing at first.
Yeah, which is when you're coming from the Fractal models, which are phenomenal. They are separate models. So you you are using an amp is a model of with the switch pulled out, the bright switch pulled out, whatever. Whereas you don't really get that sort of cascading problem that you would do on the more accurate, I would say. Not accurate in terms of sound, but accurate in terms of
functionality
and screen, UX and UI.
Well, on this one, it's even more complex because you have, so the clean channel has a volume and a master control. So the volume is it's like a gain, setting basically, but the master is also like a volume that's feeding into the power amp. But the master and volume also affect the gain that's cascading into the lead channel, but they affect it in different ways. So you've got to dial the master and the volume in to get different lead sounds. And even Boogie themselves recommend that one of the ways you can get that classic Boogie saturated screaming lead tone is by having the lead drive on the lead channel at between 1 and 2, so really low gain, and then pushing the master and the volume really high and dropping the bass all the way down to basically 0.
Basically, the bass is off, yeah.
Yeah, and then that is just...
the V. Have you got a V?
Well, no, I don't, but you can, yeah. Yes, it does have that on it, yeah, but I have a different setting. I won't bore you with the details of that, but I have a different setting. But yes, the way you get the bass is by pushing the... I can't remember is it 80 or something? 80 hertz? I can't remember what it is. Yeah. So that's where you get the bass from. But that amp is even more complex because then the preamp version has a master control to feed the power amp stage as well. And that really affects the gain of the power amp. So it's an absolute nightmare to dial in. But when you get it right, it's phenomenal, utterly phenomenal. And that's another amp that's, again, like I said, the taper on that master volume is ridiculous. And on one, it's knock your house down loud. It's ridiculous.
It is amazing, like the tube amps of the volume tapers. It's really good on the Friedman. And then, but after 4, 5, it doesn't really get that much louder.
It just gets mushy and...
Well, no, I've only took it up to 6 on the master, which was for a very brief moment. But yeah, the effect, a lot of the kind of amps where you're getting a lot of preamp gain, you don't actually want the master that high for certain ones. Anyway, certainly the way that they design the Friedmans and things, the master sits in the sweet spot between like 3 and 5. Whereas something like a JCM 800, you actually need the master up at
to get the gain,
to get the not just the gain, actually it's the thickness, because they're quite thin at lower master volumes on the JCM 800s. But that's another one of the things that they've kind of tweaked and refined with the more modern sort of US version of the British sound, is kind of getting those thicker, martially meaty tones at the lower master volumes. I can't believe how much we've talked about gear on this episode. It's not something we usually do, but
it isn't, no.
But it's been a right.
And it went the full gamut from like what our version of retro would be, all the way up to kind of modern tube amps.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, watching. We're going to try and bang these out whenever there's at least 2 of us free and willing. It's great to get back doing it again. Thanks for joining me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
And, mate.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you on the next one.
See you later.
Bye.
Peace.